Now you are mine. I don't believe it.
My sister hooked up with my ex, in my apartment, in my bed while I was at work. I found out the worst way possible. I cried, I screamed, I planned revenge, and then I met his dad, Nico Rossi, 48 years old, mafia boss, killer eyes, smile that, well, my plan was simple. Make Liam jealous, use the father, perfect revenge. The problem? I actually fell in love, and when his ex-wife found out, when Liam's mom, who's also the ex-wife who still loves Nico, found out, when everyone found out, everything fell apart. But before it fell apart, it was epic.
Welcome to my library. I'm Lena, and our story is just beginning.
Chapter 1. The Betrayal and the Plan.
They betrayed me.
There are moments in life when you know, with absolute certainty, that nothing will ever be the same again, and I wish that moment had never come for me, but it did. Mine started at 11:23 on a random Tuesday night when I opened the door to my own apartment and heard laughter coming from my bedroom, not innocent laughter. On the contrary, it was that broken, intimate kind of laughter, accompanied by sounds that make your stomach turn and your heart freeze inside your chest. My fingers trembled, holding my purse, my whole body frozen in the hallway, as if I'd forgotten how to walk, how to breathe, how to exist. The bedroom door was ajar, a sliver of light escaping like a cruel invitation to hell. I should have left, turned around and walked away. But something in me, maybe the masochistic part that still believed I could be wrong, pushed me forward. I approached slowly, each step an eternity, until my eyes confirmed what my heart already knew. Liam, my boyfriend of 3 years, the man I thought I knew, was in my bed, and he wasn't alone. The woman next to him had blonde hair I would recognize anywhere, because it was just like mine. It was terribly just like mine, because she was my sister, Amber. For one surreal second, my brain refused to process. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands, opened the camera, took a photo. The click was loud in the silence, loud enough for them to notice. That's when I screamed. "What the fuck is this?" Liam jumped out of bed so fast he almost fell, eyes wide with pure panic as he desperately searched for something to cover himself. "Luna, I can explain." But Amber wasn't in any hurry. She sat up slowly, pulling the sheet, my sheet, to cover herself with a calm that bordered on obscene. And then she smiled at me like we were having breakfast, and she'd just told a particularly funny joke. "Hey sis," she said, her voice sweet as poison. "You're home early." Something inside me broke. It wasn't my heart. That was already shattered. It was something deeper, more visceral, the thin line that separates civilization from savagery. "You," I managed to say, my voice coming out hoarse, suffocated by the rage rising up my throat. "You, relax." Amber stood up, putting on my robe like it was hers, every movement calculated to hurt me. "He came to me. I didn't steal him. He just got tired of you." She approached, and I saw in her eyes something that had always been there but I'd refused to see. Pure envy, distilled hatred. "You're bureaucratic, Luna, boring and predictable, while I'm fun." Tears burned in my eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from absolute rage, the kind that makes you want to break things. Scream until your voice gives out, set the entire world on fire. "Get out," I said, my voice low but loaded with a violence I didn't know existed in me. "Both of you get out. Now." "Luna, we can talk," Liam started, looking for his clothes scattered across the floor. I grabbed the first thing I found, a pillow, and threw it at him, then another, then the lamp. Get out of my house." They left in a rush. Liam stumbling over his own pants, Amber casting one last triumphant look over her shoulder. When the door slammed, I collapsed. I fell to the hallway floor, hugging my knees, and cried. I cried until I had no more tears, until my throat hurt, until the sun began to rise through the curtains I'd forgotten to close. "I'm going to kill her." Maya was sitting across from me, a steaming cup of coffee between her hands, eyes fixed on me with murderous intensity. My best friend since college, the only person in the world I still trusted completely. "Get in line," I replied, taking a sip of my own coffee. I hadn't slept. My eyes burned, swollen from crying so much. But something strange had happened during the night. The sadness had transformed. It had solidified into something hard, sharp, dangerous. Me first. Maya watched me carefully, her head tilted to the side. "How are you so calm?" "Because I cried all night," I said. And for the first time since everything happened, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that precedes terrible and wonderful decisions. Now I want revenge." She leaned forward, interested. "I'm going to make him regret it, make him see what he lost. I'm going to show up with someone better, older, richer, more everything." The words came too easily, as if I'd spent the entire night planning, and maybe I had. Maya blinked. "You're going to make up a boyfriend?" "No," I replied, feeling the plan take shape in my head with crystal clarity. "I'm going to borrow one, from Liam." I paused, savoring the next words. His father. The coffee Maya was drinking came out of her mouth in an impressive spray. "What?" "Nico Rossi," I continued, ignoring her reaction. I met him once, family dinner about 6 months ago. Handsome, rich, and better yet, available. Divorced for 5 years. Luna. Maya wiped up the coffee she'd spilled, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. And maybe I had. He's the father. Exactly. I cut her off, feeling a strange emotion growing in my chest. It wasn't just anger. It was excitement. Imagine Liam's face when he sees his father with me. This is insane. Or genius. I paused, thinking. There's an event tonight. Charity thing. One of those boring events the Rossi family always goes to. I show up, accidentally bump into him, and plant the seed. Maya studied me for a long moment, and then sighed, shaking her head with a reluctant smile. And if it doesn't work, then I go back to plan B. I shrugged. Trash Amber's car. She laughed finally, and that sound was like a bomb. I love you. You know that? I know, I replied, raising my cup in an imaginary toast. And that's why you're going to help me pick out a dress that makes him forget his own name. The Grand Maison Hotel was exactly the kind of place I hated. Pretentious, full of rich people pretending to care about noble causes while drinking $1,000 bottles of champagne. But tonight, I was grateful for the ostentation, because it meant I had an excuse to wear the red dress Maya had practically forced me to buy 6 months ago, and that I'd never had the courage to wear. Too flashy, I'd said at the time. Exactly the point, she'd replied. Now, standing at the entrance to the ballroom, I understood. The dress was perfect, red as blood, fitted in all the right places, elegant without being vulgar. It made my eyes look greener, my skin paler. It made me feel powerful. I took a deep breath and walked in. The Rossi family was impossible to ignore. They occupied a central table, close to the stage, radiating that kind of silent power that only truly dangerous people possess. Valentina Rossi, Nico's ex-wife and Liam's mother, looked stunning in a black dress, her neck adorned with diamonds that probably cost more than my apartment. She'd always had that cold, calculated beauty, and even from a distance I could feel the possessive aura emanating from her. Next to her, Liam looked uncomfortable, pulling at his tie like it was too tight, and stuck to him like a barnacle was amber, wearing a pink dress that made her look like a porcelain doll. She laughed too loudly, touched his arm too frequently, showing off her conquest to anyone who wanted to see. And then my eyes found him. Nico Rossi stood a bit apart from the group, talking to a man I didn't recognize. He wore an impeccable black suit, no tie, the shirt collar open in a way that should be illegal. The gray hair at his temples only made him more attractive, giving him an air of maturity, of experience, of man and not boy. He moved with natural grace, a confidence that came from someone who knew exactly how much power they had. My heart raced, and it wasn't just because of the revenge plan. I took a deep breath. Operation Revenge was officially underway. I walked to the bar like I belonged there, like my stomach wasn't churning with nervousness. The bartender approached, professional and efficient. Martini, I ordered, my voice coming out firmer than I expected. Dry. Good choice. The voice came from beside me, deep, with a slight Italian accent I hadn't noticed last time. I turned my head slowly and found myself face to face with Nico Rossi. Up close, he was even more impressive. His eyes were dark, almost black, the kind that seemed to see through you, read every secret, every lie. There was a small scar on his right eyebrow, almost imperceptible, and I found myself wanting to know the story behind it. Nico, I managed to say, feigning surprise. Hi. Didn't expect to see you here. He studied me for a moment, and then something seemed to click in his mind. Luna, he said my name slowly, savoring each syllable in a way that made my skin tingle. Liam's ex, or are you still definitely ex? I replied, taking the martini the bartender placed in front of me. I took a generous sip, needing the alcohol for courage, since he chose his upgrade. Nico raised an eyebrow, genuinely interested. Upgrade? My sister? I let the words fall between us like bombs. I drank the rest of the martini in one gulp, feeling the liquid burn down my throat. So yes, ex, very ex. Something changed in his face. The casual expression gave way to something more intense, more focused. I'm sorry, he said, and he seemed sincere. Liam is... He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. An idiot. I laughed. I couldn't help it. There he was. Nico Rossi, mafia boss, dangerous man, calling his own son an idiot. You just called your son an idiot? If the shoe fits, he shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Cheating on you with your sister? Idiot is being generous. The chemistry between us was palpable, electric, dangerous. I'd come here with a plan, calculated revenge, but the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room, made me forget about Liam, about Amber, about everything else. You're different than I imagined, I said, turning completely toward him. How did you imagine me? He asked, eyes fixed on mine. Serious, scary, with that whole mafia boss vibe. He laughed, a low, genuine sound that surprised me. I am all of that, he admitted, taking a step closer. Just one, but enough for me to feel the heat emanating from his body, to catch the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something more masculine, more essential. But I'm also human. And you? How are you? Really? The question caught me off guard. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't superficial or polite. It was real. Concerned, like he actually cared. Destroyed, I admitted, honesty escaping before I could censor it. Angry, wanting revenge. Revenge like, he tilted his head, curious. Show up with a better man. Make Liam regret everything. I paused, bold, reckless. Any candidates? His eyes gleamed with something that could be amusement or desire. Probably both. You're brave or desperate. Both, he agreed, and then did something that left me breathless. He extended his hand. Dance with me? I blinked, confused. What? Dance with me, he repeated, nodding toward the ballroom where several people were already dancing to a waltz. Revenge starts with a dance. In front of him, I looked at where Liam was sitting. Still next to Amber, and then back at Nico. His hand was still extended, waiting, steady, confident. You're evil, I murmured, but placed my hand in his. You have no idea, he replied with a smile that was pure promise. He led me to the dance floor with an ease that spoke of years of practice, of power accustomed to being obeyed. As soon as we reached the center, his hand found my waist. Firm, possessive, pulling me closer than a normal dance would allow. The other hand held mine, fingers intertwined, and we began to move. He danced like he did everything, with absolute control, natural confidence, a grace that made me forget to breathe. Each step was precise, each movement fluid, and I found myself following without thinking, as if our bodies had known each other for years. Liam is watching, I whispered, trying not to seem as affected as I was. Good. Nico pulled me even closer. Impossible. Dangerous. Keep looking at me. Why? Because if you look at him, he wins. Look at me. Only me. I obeyed, and the world disappeared. There was no more ballroom. No more music, no more people. There was only him, dark eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made me tremble. You're dangerous, I managed to say, my voice coming out hoarse. Consider yourself warned, he replied, and then did something that almost made me stumble. He brought his mouth to my ear, breath hot against my skin. And you're intriguing. Why? Because you came here for revenge, he murmured, lips almost touching my ear. And you're feeling something else. My heart raced, beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. How do you know? He brought our intertwined hand to my neck, fingers pressing lightly against my pulse, feeling the acceleration. Your pulse, racing, and it's not from anger. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All that existed was his proximity, the heat, the way he looked at me like he could devour me, and at the same time protect me from all the evil in the world. This is inappropriate, I murmured, without conviction. Completely, he agreed, but smiled. That smile should come with a warning. But you like it. The music ended, but we didn't separate immediately. We stood there too close, looking at each other like the rest of the world didn't exist. It was Nico who finally took a step back, but his fingers lingered on my waist, as if reluctant to lose contact. Can I see you again? He asked, voice low, intimate. Outside of here? I should say no. Should remember this was about revenge, about making Liam pay, not about the way my heart beat out of control, or how my body still felt the heat of his fingers on my waist. But I didn't say no. When? I asked. Tomorrow. Dinner. Just us. No revenge. Just us? He smiled, and this time it was different, softer, more real, and the absurd attraction between us, but mainly us. Okay, the words came out before my brain could censor them. Tomorrow. Nico took my hand and raised it to his lips, kissing it in a chivalrous way that seemed to belong to another century. Until tomorrow, Luna. And then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd, leaving me trembling in the middle of the dance floor. Maya appeared at my side in seconds, eyes wide. Holy shit, she whispered. Urgent. You just... with the father. I know, I interrupted, still looking at where he'd disappeared. And it was hot, like absurdly hot. Even I felt it from here. I know, I repeated, unable to say anything else. From across the room I heard Liam. What is my father doing with Luna? His voice came out loud, furious, desperate. Amber was beside him, eyes narrowed with pure envy. Winning the game you lost, apparently. But it was Valentina who scared me. She was further away, a champagne flute in her hand, watching everything with eyes cold as ice. And while everyone focused on me and Nico, I saw her murmur something, lips moving in words I couldn't hear but could imagine. Words like, this isn't going to happen. And for the first time since this crazy plan began, I felt a shiver of fear run down my spine. Because Valentina Rossi wasn't just angry as a mother protecting her son. She was angry as a woman who still loved her ex-husband. And women like that were infinitely more dangerous. Chapter 2. The Dinner.
This feels dangerous.
And the chemistry. The next day was a disaster. I woke up at 6 a.m. after sleeping maybe 2 hours. My brain refusing to shut down, stuck in an infinite loop of the night before. The dance, his hands on my waist, the racing pulse, the dinner invitation. And worse, much worse, the way my entire body had reacted to him, as if every cell recognized something my mind was still struggling to accept. By 7 a.m, my closet looked like a war zone, clothes scattered across the bed, on the floor, hanging on the chair in chaotic piles of rejected fabrics. Nothing worked. Nothing was good enough. Everything screamed trying too hard or not caring enough, and I was stuck somewhere between panic and absolute denial. Maya showed up at 8. using the spare key I'd given her years ago, carrying 2 giant cups of coffee, and the expression of someone who knew exactly what chaos she'd find. She looked around the room, assessed the damage, and sighed. "It's just dinner," she said, handing me one of the cups. "With my ex's father," I replied, grabbing the coffee like it was a life preserver, "who I dated for 3 years. And who cheated on you with your sister," Maya retorted, starting to pick up some pieces of clothing from the floor with an efficiency I envied. She paused, looking at me with that gleam in her eyes that always preceded her most provocative comments. "Forget them. Focus on you and the hot Italian daddy. Don't call him that." I almost spit out my coffee, feeling my face heat up in a ridiculous way. Maya laughed, tossing a navy blue dress in my direction. "But he is." The restaurant was exactly the kind of place someone like Nico Rossi would choose. Italian, obviously, small and intimate, with low lighting that created soft shadows on the exposed brick walls. The kind of place where important conversations happened, where deals were made or romances began, away from curious eyes and indiscreet cameras. Nico was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table in the most private corner of the restaurant, and the sight of him made me stop for a second at the entrance. He was wearing a suit again, but this time without a tie, the first 2 buttons of his shirt unbuttoned in a way that should be a crime. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd recently run his fingers through it, and when he saw me, he stood up with a natural grace that made my stomach knot. "You came," he said, and there was a note of genuine relief in his voice. "I considered running away," I admitted, because if there was one thing I'd learned the night before, it was that lying to Nico Rossi was useless. He saw through everything. He smiled, that small, devastating smile that was quickly becoming my favorite and most dangerous thing at the same time. "And why didn't you run?" "Curiosity," I replied, letting him pull out the chair for me, a chivalrous gesture that seemed so natural to him. I sat down, adjusting the blue dress Maya had chosen, and looked at him across the table. "And you?" "Honest," he said, returning to his chair, eyes never leaving mine. "I like that." The waiter appeared, efficient and discreet, took our wine orders and disappeared like smoke. The silence that remained wasn't uncomfortable, but it was charged with something electric, expectant, like the pause before a storm. "So," Nico began, leaning back in his chair with that relaxed posture that hid muscles ready for action. "Revenge, still the plan?" I laughed, a low sound without humor. "Maybe. I don't know anymore." I paused, spinning the wine glass between my fingers. "Are you here for revenge on Liam? Because he's an idiot?" "No." The answer came quick, firm, without hesitation. "I'm here because you're interesting." "Interesting how?" "Brave, funny, beautiful." He paused, leaning slightly forward, and the movement brought that scent of expensive cologne mixed with something essentially masculine that had left me dizzy the night before, and completely out of my reach. I blinked, surprised. "Why?" "Because you're my son's ex. That's complicated. Very complicated," I agreed, feeling the weight of those words. "And yet," he continued, eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that stole my breath, "I can't stop thinking about you." My heart raced, beating so hard I was sure he could hear it across the table. "I think about you too," I admitted, my voice coming out lower, more vulnerable than I intended. "And I feel guilty." "Wrong. It is wrong," Nico agreed, but didn't look away. "Totally." But he leaned in a little more, eliminating the space between us in a way that made the entire restaurant disappear. "It doesn't feel wrong. It doesn't feel wrong," I whispered. The silence that fell between us was dense, loaded with everything we weren't saying, with everything we were feeling, and couldn't admit yet. It was Nico who broke it, his voice coming out hoarse, determined. "Can we try? See where this goes?" The question was simple, but carried the weight of 1,000 complications. "And Liam? Your ex-wife? My sister? Fuck them." He paused, an almost guilty expression passing quickly across his face. "Sorry, but you deserve happiness, Luna, not guilt." "And you?" I asked, turning the question back on him. "Do you deserve it?" I saw something change in his face, a rare vulnerability appearing in the lines around his eyes, in the way his shoulders dropped slightly. "I don't know," he admitted, voice low, honest in a way that broke me a little. "But with you, I want to find out." Dessert arrived, tiramisu that I could barely taste, because Nico had started talking, really talking, and I was mesmerized. "Tell me something about you," I asked, resting my chin on my hand. "Real, not mafia, boss. Just you." He sighed, looking at the wine in his glass, as if searching for courage in the dark liquid. "I got divorced 5 years ago. Valentina, Liam's mother, cheated, lied, made me an idiot for months before I found out. But even so, she never got over me. Since then," he paused, jaw tightening slightly, "just work, power, business, nothing else. Until," I encouraged, my hand moving across the table to touch his. "Until yesterday." He turned his hand, intertwining our fingers in a way that felt frighteningly right. "Seeing you in that red dress, dancing with me." His eyes met mine. First time in 5 years I've felt anything. The confession completely disarmed me. "I'm sorry. About the divorce, the betrayal. Thank you." He squeezed my hand gently. "And you? Family? Besides Amber?" I sighed, feeling the familiar weight of the story I rarely told. "My parents divorced when I was 10. Amber was was always the spoiled one, the favorite. I was the responsible one, the good girl, the one who had to keep everything together. I laughed, but it was a bitter sound. And look where it got me. To me, Nico said simply. Is that bad? No, I replied. Honest. It's scary, but not bad. Outside the restaurant, the night was cold, the air carrying that characteristic New York smell that mixes asphalt, food, and infinite possibilities. Nico had stayed behind, paying the bill while I waited on the sidewalk, hugging my own arms against the wind. Can I take you home? He appeared at my side, placing his jacket over my shoulders before I could protest. The gesture warmed me more than the fabric. Do you drive or have a driver? Tonight? He smiled. I drive. I want time alone with you. The car was exactly what I expected. Black, luxurious, with leather interior that smelled new and expensive. Nico drove with the same confidence he did everything, one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the gear shift, and I found myself watching his profile illuminated by the city lights. This is crazy, I murmured, more to myself than to him. Agreed, Liam is going to lose it, probably. Valentina, who's your ex, is going to hate me. Nico looked at me briefly before returning his eyes to the road, and there was genuine humor in his expression. She already hates everyone. Don't take it personally. I laughed, unable to help it. You're different than I expected. How so? Funny, kind. I expected intimidating. He turned to look at me, and even in the darkness of the car, I saw the absolute intensity in his eyes. I am intimidating, just not with you. At the door of my apartment, we stood for a moment that seemed to stretch forever. The keys were in my hand, but I couldn't move, couldn't take that final step that would end the night. Thank you, I managed to say. For tonight. Thank you for coming, he replied. And then we stood there, looking at each other like awkward teenagers on a first date. Are you going to kiss me? The words came out before I could censor them. Nico smiled, raising his hand to touch my face, fingers tracing the line of my jaw, with a gentleness that completely contrasted with the dangerous man the world saw. I want to, very much, but not tonight. Why? Because when I kiss you, he said, voice low, hoarse, loaded with promise, it won't be the end of a first date. It'll be the beginning of everything, and I want to make sure you want that. And if I already want it? He moved closer, so close I felt his breath on my face, his warmth enveloping me completely. Then, tomorrow, I repeated, breathless. He took a step back, and the loss of contact was physical, painful. Good night, Luna. I entered the apartment in a state of shock, closing the door and leaning against it, trying to make my heart return to a normal rhythm. So, I jumped, hand on my chest, finding Maya sitting on the couch with a bowl of popcorn and a smile that said she'd been there for hours. He didn't kiss me, I replied, still processing. Maya blinked, confused. And that's good? He said that when he kisses me, it'll be the beginning of everything. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor, hugging my knees. That he wants to make sure I want this. Holy shit, Maya whispered, eyes wide. Daddy's in love. I laughed, but the sound came out strangled, scared. Me too. And that truth, spoken out loud in the silence of my apartment, with my best friend looking at me with equal measures of concern and excitement, was more terrifying than anything Liam or Amber could do, because this had started as revenge, but it was quickly becoming something much, much more real. Chapter 3. The Kiss
I don't regret this.
and the chaos. When the intercom buzzed the next day, at 2 in the afternoon, I was still in my pajamas, sitting on the couch with a mug of cold tea, watching some stupid show on TV without really paying attention. My head was somewhere else, stuck on the night before, on Nico's words, on the promise of tomorrow that was now today. I got up slowly, pressing the intercom button with my heart already racing for some reason I didn't want to admit. Yes? Luna? His voice came through the small speaker, deep and unmistakable. It's me. I looked down at my ridiculous flannel pajamas, at the hair that probably looked like a bird's nest, and felt panic rising. You're here? Now? I am. Can I come up? My apartment was a mess. I was a mess. But something in his voice, in the expectation it carried, made me press the button that unlocked the door without thinking twice. 3 minutes later, after a frantic and useless attempt to fix my hair and change out of my pajamas into jeans and a simple shirt, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, counted to 3, and opened the door. Nico was there, casual in a way that should be illegal, wearing dark jeans and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He smiled when he saw me, that small smile that did strange things to my stomach. Hi, I managed to say. Hi, he replied, and then raised a hand, showing a wicker basket I hadn't noticed. I thought of a picnic, if you're free. I blinked, processing. A picnic? Yeah, I know a place. Private, quiet, beautiful. He tilted his head, studying my face. Unless you have other plans. I should have other plans. Should have a life beyond sitting on the couch thinking about him. But the truth was I didn't. And even if I did, I'd cancel everything in that moment. Give me 5 minutes, I said, already turning back toward the bedroom. Take 10, I heard him say, amused. I'll wait. The park was exactly as he'd described, private, hidden behind high gates and ivy-covered walls, the kind of place only people with a lot of money and connections knew existed. The grass was absurdly green, the trees formed a natural canopy that filtered the sunlight into golden patterns, and in the center of it all was a small, perfectly calm lake. Nico spread a blanket under an old tree, taking things from the basket that looked like they came from a movie. French cheeses, grapes, Italian bread, wine that probably cost more than my rent. I sat beside him, trying not to look as impressed as I was. "Do you do this often?" I asked, picking up a grape. "Elaborate picnics?" "Never," he replied, pouring wine into 2 real wine glasses he'd brought. "First time. Why?" He looked at me, dark eyes reflecting the light filtered through the leaves. "Because you deserve something different. Special." And there it was again, that brutal honesty that completely disarmed me. "You're dangerously good at this," I murmured. "At what?" "At saying exactly the right thing." He smiled, extending the glass to me. "I'm just being honest. We talked for hours. Or maybe minutes that felt like hours, time losing meaning as he told stories about Italy, about his childhood in Naples, about how he'd come to the United States at 20 with nothing but ambition and anger. I talked about my abandoned dreams of being a writer, about how I'd ended up in a job that paid the bills but slowly killed my soul. "You can still write," he said, collecting our empty plates. "It's too late. It's never too late to start over." He moved closer, eliminating the space between us on the blanket. "I started over at 43 after the divorce, rebuilt everything from scratch. And was it worth it?" "It's worth it," he said, eyes fixed on mine with that intensity that stole my breath. Especially now. My heart raced, beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. The world around us disappeared. The trees, the lake, everything vanishing until only the 2 of us existed. "Nico," I began, not knowing what I was going to say, but he didn't let me finish. His hand came up, fingers touching my face with a gentleness that contrasted with everything I knew about him, tracing the line of my jaw, down my neck, making every nerve ending in my body come alive. "Can I?" he asked, voice hoarse, low. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't hesitant. It was intense, consuming, the kind of kiss that rewrites your definition of everything that came before. His hand slid to the nape of my neck, fingers tangling in my hair, pulling me closer while the other found my waist, firm, possessive. I responded without thinking, without hesitating, my hands moving up his chest until they reached his shoulders, feeling the tense muscles beneath his shirt. When we separated, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine, eyes still closed. "Worth the wait," I managed to say, my voice coming out thick. He laughed, a low, vibrant sound. Every second, we stayed there, tangled in each other under the tree, and for the first time in days, maybe in years, I felt completely at peace. I didn't see who took the photo. I didn't hear the camera click, didn't notice the discreet flash hidden in the trees on the other side of the lake. I was too busy lost in Nico, in the warmth of his body, in the way his fingers drew lazy patterns on my back, while we talked about everything and nothing. I only found out the next day, when my phone exploded with notifications before the sun had even fully risen. The first message was from Maya, just a link followed by 3 exclamation points and a skull emoji. I clicked with trembling fingers, sleep evaporating instantly when the page loaded. "Mafia boss in forbidden romance with son's ex-girlfriend?" The headline screamed in bold letters, and below it, 3 photos in sequence. Us arriving at the park, us on the blanket, very close. And the last one, the worst, the exact moment of the kiss, captured in sharp, devastating detail. My stomach turned. The phone rang, making me jump. Liam's name flashed on the screen. Insistent. Furious. I answered before I could think better of it. "Luna." His voice came out loud, out of control, full of a rage I'd never heard before. "What the hell are you doing with my father?" "Liam, I saw the photos. Everyone saw. You're dating him, kissing him. My father. It's none of your business," I replied, feeling my own anger starting to boil. "You lost the right to have an opinion about my life when you chose my sister. This is disgusting. You're only doing this to get back at me." "No," I said, and realized it was true. It had started that way maybe, but it wasn't anymore. "I'm doing it because I care about him, because he treats me better in 3 days than you did in 3 years. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "You're going to regret this." The call cut off before I could respond. 5 minutes later, Amber called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail anyway, her sugary, venomous voice leaking from the speaker. "So that's it, Luna? You stole Liam's daddy because you couldn't keep the son? How pathetic. I expected to see you destroyed. Still crying, but no. You're out there happy with a man old enough to be your father. How disgusting." I deleted the message without finishing it. But it was the third call that really scared me. Nico's phone rang while I was still holding mine, trembling with rage and adrenaline. He was on the other side of my living room, having come over as soon as the photos leaked, and when he answered, I saw his face change, the calm mask falling to reveal something dangerous. "Valentina," he said, voice icy. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but the volume was loud enough for sounds to leak from the phone, furious words tumbling over each other. "This is humiliating. With her? Liam's ex? Have you completely lost your mind? Valentina, Nico tried to interrupt. No, you're going to listen to me. That girl is using you. She's destroying our family. And on top of that, her voice broke, turning into something more desperate. You replaced me with her? With this woman who isn't even half of what I am? Enough, Nico cut in, voice hard as steel. Don't talk about her like that. You still love me. I know you do. It was 15 years, Nico. A son, a whole life, and you're going to throw it all away? You threw it away when you cheated on me. This ended 5 years ago. Liar, you never got over me, just like I never got over you. Come back to me. Forget this child. Rebuild our family. No, the word came out final, definitive. I love her, Valentina, and you need to accept that. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Valentina's voice came back. Lower, more dangerous. You're going to regret this. Both of you will. The call ended. Nico stood still for a long moment, still holding the phone, breathing heavy. When he turned to me, I saw worry in his eyes for the first time. This is turning into a mess, I murmured, hugging my own arms. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, pulling me into his arms with a firmness that was simultaneously gentle and possessive. Let it, he said against my hair. I'll protect you. From everything. From everyone. I believed him. But as I stood there, safe in his arms, I couldn't help the shiver that ran down my spine. Because Valentina hadn't spoken like a mother protecting her son. She'd spoken like a woman fighting for the man she loved. And women like that were infinitely more dangerous. The storm was just beginning. Chapter 4. The Viper strikes the cafe where I worked.
He is still mine.
Was one of those cozy places that served expensive lattes and croissants that cost triple what they should, frequented by college students and professionals pretending to work while endlessly scrolling through social media. Normally, I liked the atmosphere, the smell of roasted coffee mixed with sweet pastries, the constant hum of conversations I never really had to listen to. But today, 3 days after the photos leaked, every glance seemed loaded with judgment, every whisper directed at me. I'd become news, gossip, the kind of scandal people love to consume with their morning coffee. I was cleaning a table near the window when the door opened, bringing a gust of cold air and the last person I wanted to see. Valentina Rossi walked in like she owned the place, wearing a camel wool coat that probably cost more than my annual salary, her high heels clicking on the wooden floor with a precision that seemed calculated to draw attention. Her dark hair was pulled into an impeccable bun, her face made up with the perfection of someone who had the time and money to care about these things. Her eyes found mine across the crowded cafe, and I saw something in them that made me freeze in place. It wasn't just anger. It was contained fury, distilled, the kind of emotion that had been stored for days, and was now looking for an outlet. She crossed the cafe directly to me, completely ignoring the other customers, the curious looks, everything except her target. You! The word came out like poison, low enough not to cause a scene, but loaded with such hatred that I instinctively took a step back. How dare you, Mrs. Rossi, I began, holding the cleaning cloth like it was some kind of pathetic shield. You dated my son. She cut me off, moving one step closer, completely invading my personal space. And now you seduce my ex-husband? What kind of woman does that? The anger that had been dormant inside me for the last few days suddenly woke up. Hot and fierce, I dropped the cloth on the table and faced her, refusing to back up anymore. Your son cheated on me with my sister in my bed, so don't talk to me about respect. Something flashed in her eyes. Surprise maybe that I'd answered back, but it was quickly replaced by more anger. Liam made a mistake, yes, but this is revenge. It started that way, I admitted, because there was no point in lying, but it became real. I care about Nico. Truly. Real? She almost laughed, a bitter sound without humor. You're a child compared to him. 20 years younger, no experience, no understanding of his world. No, he doesn't treat me like a child, I interrupted, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. Valentina stopped, studying me with narrowed eyes, and then something changed in her expression. What had been pure anger transformed into something more calculated, more dangerous. She moved closer, so close I could smell the expensive perfume she wore, and when she spoke again, her voice was lower, more intimate, more venomous. You know what's funny? She asked, tilting her head slightly. You think this is about protecting my son, and partly it is, of course. Liam is weak, always has been, needs his mother for everything, but that's not the only reason I'm here. My stomach tightened, intuiting what was coming before she even continued. Nico still loves me, she said, and there was so much certainty in her voice it almost made me waver. He's always loved me. I may have made mistakes, cheated, lied, but 15 years of marriage don't just disappear like that. He's mine. Always was. Always will be. You're wrong, I managed to say, but my voice came out less confident than I would have liked. Valentina smiled, and it was the cruelest smile I'd ever seen. Am I? Then why hasn't he gotten seriously involved with anyone in those 5 years? Why did he come running whenever I called needing something? Why could he never completely cut me out of his life? Each question was a stab, because I didn't have answers to them. You're just a temporary distraction, dear, she continued, savoring each word. Something new, exciting. forbidden. But when the novelty wears off, when he gets tired of playing with his son's ex, you know what's going to happen? She paused dramatically, eyes fixed on mine. He comes back to me, like he always should have stayed. Luna realizes, she murmured, so low I almost didn't hear. It's not just about Liam, it's about you. I swallowed hard, feeling my legs tremble. You still want him. Smart, finally. Valentina took a step back, adjusting her coat with deliberately calm gestures. I was married to that man for 15 years. I know every part of him. Every scar, every nightmare, every weakness. You think a few months with a girl 20 years younger are going to change that? Erase our history? She laughed again. You're naive. Nico chose me, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. For now, she replied with a shrug, but I'm patient. I've already waited 5 years. I can wait a little longer. And when you break, when the weight of his world is too much for your young little shoulders to handle, when you realize you can't compete with 15 years of history, she leaned in, whispering near my ear, I'll be there, waiting, like I always have been. And then she turned and left, heels clicking on the floor with the same precision as when she entered, leaving me standing there trembling with equal measures of rage and fear. Nico's office was on the top floor of a glass building in the financial district, the kind of place where serious business happened and questions weren't asked. Valentina knew the way with her eyes closed, had been there hundreds of times during the marriage, and entered without knocking on the dark mahogany door, not caring about the secretary who tried to stop her. Nico was behind the desk, examining documents, but looked up when she entered, his expression immediately closing off. Valentina, he said, voice icy. What do you want? Nico, dear, she replied, closing the door behind her and crossing the office with measured steps. It's been so long, alone like this. What do you want? He repeated, each word coming out separate, with no room for interpretation. Valentina sat on the edge of his desk, crossing her legs in a way she knew was attractive. Leaning slightly forward, I heard rumors. You with a little girl, our son's ex. She laughed, a sound intended to be light, but came out sharp, pathetic. Something changed in Nico's face, his eyes darkening in a way that would have scared anyone with good sense. Careful, or what? Valentina moved closer, raising her hand to touch his chest through the shirt, feeling the tense muscles beneath her fingers. We had something, Nico. 15 years of marriage, a son, passion, history. Are you really going to throw it all away for her? Nico grabbed her wrist, removing her hand with controlled firmness. You threw it away when you cheated on me, lied, made me look like an idiot for months. A mistake, Valentina said quickly, her voice softening, her eyes filling with tears she had years of practice producing. A mistake I regret every day. Come back to me, Nico. Rebuild our family. Liam needs it. He's lost, confused. Liam is an adult. I need it, she continued, ignoring the interruption. Placing both hands on his chest now, looking up through her lashes. Leave that child. Come home, where you belong. To who you belong to. No. The word came out simple, final. Valentina's mask of vulnerability slipped, giving way to something harder, crueler. She can't handle your world, Nico. The danger, the pressure, the enemies, the impossible choices you have to make every day. And me, your ex-wife who still loves you. She paused, letting the words weigh in the air. She's going to break. And when she breaks, you know who'll be here? Me, waiting, like I always have been. Nico took a step back, creating physical distance between them. You underestimate her. We'll see, Valentina said, adjusting the purse on her shoulder, regaining composure. She walked to the door but stopped before opening it, turning to cast one last look. This war is just beginning, Nico, and you know I've always been great at long wars. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Nico alone in his office, hands resting on the desk and jaw tense. The family dinner hadn't been my idea. My mother had insisted, saying it had been months since we'd all gotten together, that family was important, that we needed to talk. I'd agreed, mainly because I knew postponing would only make things worse. And now I was sitting at the dinner table in the house where I grew up, with parents on both sides, and Amber across from me, smiling like a cat that had just swallowed a canary. So Luna, Amber began, delicately cutting a piece of chicken on her plate, voice sweet as poisoned honey. I heard you're dating someone. I felt all eyes at the table turn to me. None of your business. But it is, she insisted, dropping her silverware and leaning forward with false interest. Because the someone is Liam's father. His father, she laughed. Too loud. Too forced. That's sad, Luna. Desperate even. What? My mother dropped her fork on the plate with a loud noise. Luna, are you dating Nico Rossi? I am, I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. For revenge, Amber practically screamed, eyes shining with barely disguised malice. Because I got Liam. Admit it. It started that way, I admitted, looking directly at her. But it's not anymore. I love him. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. My father was the first to speak, his voice loaded with genuine concern that made me feel 11 again. Luna, sweetheart, this man is dangerous. Mafia, illegal business, violence. Are you sure about this? I am, I replied, turning to him, more sure than I ever was about Liam. Amber slammed her hands on the table, making the plates jump. Until he gets tired of you. Men like that get tired, Luna. You'll see. You'll be replaced by someone younger, prettier, more. At least Liam is my age, I shouted, finally losing my composure. And you have my lack of character, Amber shouted back. I got up from the table so fast my chair almost fell. You know what's funny, Amber? You always had everything. Always were the favorite, the spoiled one, the one who got everything handed to her. And even so, it wasn't enough. You had to take what was mine just to prove you could. But guess what? You got Liam. Congratulations. You got a weak man, manipulated, who will never love you as much as he loves his mother's approval. I hope you're very happy together. I left before anyone could respond, grabbing my purse from the living room couch and walking out, leaving behind the dinner, the family, everything. Nico's house was everything I expected. Large, modern, minimalist in a way that screamed money, but with a personal touch here and there that made it a home, and not just a property. When Liam showed up without warning, Rocco, the security guard at the door, tried to stop him, but Nico waved that it was fine. Dad, Liam entered the room like a hurricane, face red with anger. We need to talk. Nico was sitting in a leather armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and barely looked up. So, talk. Luna? Liam started pacing back and forth, gesturing frantically. Seriously? You're dating Luna? I am. This is disgusting. Repulsive. She was mine. Nico finally looked up, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. And you lost her when you chose to cheat. Your choice. Your consequences. But you're my father, Liam shouted, his voice breaking. There's a code. There are rules about this. Code? Nico stood up slowly, placing the glass on the table with deliberate care. You cheated on the woman you dated for 3 years with her sister, in her bed, and you're going to talk to me about code? I made a mistake, and I make a choice, Nico replied, approaching his son with measured steps. Luna, end of conversation. She's using you. Liam unconsciously backed up. To get back at me. For revenge. Don't you see that? Nico stopped a few inches from his son, and Liam had to lift his chin to meet his father's eyes. When Nico spoke, his voice was low, dangerous, loaded with a threat that didn't need to be made explicit. Careful, Liam. Very careful what you say next. Liam opened his mouth, closed it, and then the words came out in a desperate rush. You're going to regret this. Mom won't accept it either. She still loves you. You know that. Your mother made her choices 5 years ago when she decided to cheat on me, Nico said, each word coming out heavy. Now I make my choices, and I choose Luna. She's destroying our family. The only thing I regret, Nico said, and there was genuine sadness in his voice now, mixed with disappointment. Is raising such a weak son. Liam's face lost all color. For a moment he just stood there, mouth open, eyes wide with the wound caused by his father's words. Then he turned and left, almost running, slamming the door hard enough to make the pictures on the walls shake. Nico returned to the armchair, picked up the whiskey again, and took a long sip. Rocco appeared at the door. Boss? I'm fine, Nico replied, but his voice said otherwise. Later that night, I was in my apartment, still processing the disaster that had been the family dinner, when my phone vibrated. A message from Nico. Can you come here? I need to see you. I didn't hesitate. When I arrived at his house 20 minutes later, Rocco let me in without questions. I found Nico on the terrace, looking at the illuminated city below, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. Hi, I said softly, approaching. He turned, and when he saw me, something in his face softened. Hi. He pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my hair. How was dinner? Horrible, I admitted, wrapping my arms around his waist. Amber provoked, I exploded, left slamming the door. And you? Liam was here. Also horrible. We stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, finding comfort in one another, while the world around us seemed determined to tear us apart. They're not going to give up, I murmured against his chest. I know, he replied, kissing the top of my head, but neither are we. And there, under the stars, with the city glowing below, and the weight of the world on our shoulders, I believed him, even knowing the storm was just beginning, even knowing that Valentina, Liam, Amber, all of them were preparing for war, even knowing the worst was still to come. Because being with Nico, even in the middle of chaos, felt more right than anything I'd felt before, and that had to mean something. It had to mean everything. Chapter 5. Hard Choices.
I choose you.
The box arrived on a Monday, wrapped in silver paper with a black satin bow. There was no return address, but I didn't need one to know who it came from. Inside, an expensive pearl necklace and a card with elegant handwriting. He always comes back to me. Always has. It was the third one in 2 weeks. The first had been a book about age gap relationships, passages underlined about how they rarely worked. The second, a photo of Valentina and Nico from their wedding, radiant, with a simple note, 15 years. I threw the box on the table and backed away like it was burning. My phone vibrated. Amber had tagged me in a post, smiling next to Liam at some fancy restaurant, the caption a barely disguised stab. Worried about my sister who is clearly going through a difficult time. We hope she finds someone her own age soon. The comments were cruel. Gold digger. Home wrecker. Desperate. I blocked Amber, again. She always created new accounts. The last straw came 3 days later, when Valentina showed up at the charity event I was organizing for work. She walked in wearing a red dress identical to the one I'd worn the night I met Nico, and spent the evening circulating, smiling, dropping poisonous comments. Nico has always been so generous, she said loud enough for me to hear. Even now, with this strange phase he's going through, he's still the man I met and loved. You know how it is. Men of a certain age sometimes need to feel young again, but it always passes, always returns to what's real, to what has history. I left the event before it ended. Unable to stand another second of that poisonous smile, I went straight to Nico's apartment, using the key he'd given me the week before. He was in the office working, even though it was almost midnight, and looked up when I entered, his face immediately filling with concern. Luna, what happened? I let my purse fall to the floor and let it all out. The boxes, the notes, Amber's posts, the rumors, Valentina at the event, every poisonous comment, every judgmental look. Maybe it's better to stop. The words came out before I could censor them, before it gets worse, before someone really gets hurt. Nico stood up slowly, rounding the desk until he was standing in front of me. Do you want to stop? I wanted to say yes, that it was easier, safer, but it wasn't true. No, I admitted, feeling hot tears slide down my face. But your ex-wife? Your son? My sister? The whole world seems to be against us. They're not more important than you, he said, raising his hands to dry my tears with his thumbs. Not Valentina, not Liam, not the opinion of strangers. Nothing is more important than you. How can you be so sure? He pulled me to the couch, sitting beside me but keeping my hands in his. I spent 5 years alone, Luna. 5 empty years. Just work, power, endless business. Valentina destroyed our marriage but never left me alone. Always calling, always creating excuses to show up, always using Liam to manipulate me into coming back. And I never went back, never wanted to, but I also never managed to really move forward. He squeezed my hands. Until you brought me back to life, Luna. I'm not going to lose this. I'm not going to lose you. The tears came back, but this time they weren't from fear. I love you, I whispered. I love you more, he replied, and then kissed me. It was different from the other kisses. It didn't have urgency. It had promise. It had future. Stay with me tonight, he said when we separated. I don't want you to go back alone. Okay, I agreed, because I didn't want to be anywhere else. Nico's bedroom was exactly as I imagined. Minimalist, elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city. He lent me one of his shirts to sleep in, and when I came back from the bathroom, I found him standing near the window. You're beautiful, he said simply. I crossed the room to him, my heart racing. Should I stay? If you want to. I want to. He took my hand and guided me to the bed. What happened next was slow, careful, full of a tenderness that surprised me. Each touch was deliberate, each kiss loaded with emotion, as if he were memorizing every moment. And when we finally became one, it wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a connection so deep it made me forget everything except that moment, except the two of us. Afterward, lying in his arms with my head on his chest, listening to the rhythm of the heart beating beneath my ear, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. No regrets? He asked quietly, fingers drawing patterns on my back. None, I replied. And you? Never. You're the best choice I've ever made. But while we slept, elsewhere in the city, Valentina was making choices of her own. Sitting in her impeccable living room, a glass of wine in her hand, she dialed a number she hadn't called in years. The man who answered had a rough, dangerous voice. Marco, Valentina said, voice smooth but loaded with venom. We need to talk about Nico Rossi and a little complication he's having. On the other end of the line, Marco Castellano, Nico's longtime rival in the city's shadier business, smiled. I'm listening. His little girlfriend, Luna Brennan, leaves work every day at 6 in the evening. Cafe on Sullivan Street. Always alone. Always unprotected. Nico still hasn't put security on her. The fool is too confident. Valentina took a sip of wine. I imagine it would be very convenient if something happened to her. Nothing permanent, of course. Just enough for him to realize this ridiculous relationship only brings problems. And what do I get out of this? Information about his next moves, transport routes, contact names, everything you need to finally overcome the Rossi empire. Marco was silent for a moment, considering. Tomorrow at 6, you said? Tomorrow at 6. Liam was also making moves of his own, sitting in the apartment he now shared with Amber. You should call, Amber said from the couch, painting her nails. Try again. Say you miss her, that you still love her. But I don't. Doesn't matter. Amber cut him off. What matters is making her doubt him. Your mother is right. We need to destroy this before it gets too serious. Liam looked at his phone for a long moment and then typed, checking in on you. Hope you're well and safe. I know my dad can be complicated. If you need me, I'm here. The message was delivered. Read. No response came. The next day, I left work at exactly 6 in the evening, like always. The sun was already setting, painting the sky orange and pink, and the street was busy with people heading home. I grabbed my phone to call Nico, smiling as I thought about the night before, when something made me stop. A black van had parked in front of the cafe, side door open, engine running. Before I could process what was happening, 2 men came from behind me. A cloth was pressed against my face, chemical smell invading my nostrils. I tried to scream, fight, but my limbs were already heavy, the world starting to spin. I felt my body being dragged, heard distant voices. Quick, before someone sees. Valentina said no marks. The boss wants her intact. Nico Rossi is going to pay dearly for this. I tried to reach for my phone, but it fell to the sidewalk with a dull thud. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was the pink sky above, beautiful and indifferent to my terror. And then, nothing. Half an hour later, Nico called my phone. Once, twice, 3 times. Straight to voicemail. He frowned, something tightening in his chest. Luna always answered. Always. He called Rocco. Go pick up Luna from work. Now. Boss, I thought she was going straight home today. Now, Rocco. 20 minutes later, Rocco called back, voice tense. Boss, her phone is on the sidewalk. Screen broken. Purse is gone. And there are witnesses saying they saw a black van, 2 men, her being dragged. The silence on the other end was absolute. Then Nico spoke, and his voice was so cold that Rocco shivered. Find her. Mobilize everyone. Burn the city if you have to. I want every informant, every contact, every damn security camera in the area searched. And Rocco, yes boss, find out who did this, because when I find them, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The meaning was clear. There would be blood. Chapter 6. When everything falls apart.
He will come.
I woke up with a throbbing headache and my mouth dry as a desert. The smell was what hit me first, a mixture of mold, rusted metal, and something chemical that made my stomach turn. I tried to move and realized my hands were tied behind my back, wrists already aching from the rough rope cutting into my skin. The environment around me was dark, lit only by a weak bulb hanging from the ceiling that swayed slightly, creating dancing shadows on the concrete walls. An abandoned warehouse, maybe, or a basement. The kind of place where screams wouldn't be heard. I tried not to panic, breathing deeply through my nose, forcing my brain still foggy from the sedative to think, to process, to find a way out. But the fear was there, crawling up my spine, tightening my throat. The metal door creaked as it opened, and a man entered, tall, gray-haired, with a deep scar running from his left eye to his chin. He studied me with cold, calculating eyes, like I was merchandise and not a person. Finally awake, he said, voice rough from too much smoking. Thought my men overdosed you. Who are you? I managed to ask, my own voice coming out hoarse. What do you want from me? He smiled, but there was no humor in that gesture, only cruelty. Marco Castellano, and you, dear Luna, are the leverage I'm going to use to destroy Nico Rossi once and for all. My stomach sank. Nico will kill you when he finds out. If he finds out where you are, Marco approached, crouching in front of me, so close I could smell cigarettes on his breath. And even if he does, it'll be too late. I'm going to use you to lure him in, make him make mistakes, destroy everything he's built. And when I'm done with him, well, he ran a cold finger down my cheek, making me shudder. Maybe I'll keep you as a consolation prize. I spit in his face. Marco froze for a second, surprised by the boldness, and then his hand flew, connecting with my cheek in a slap that made my head spin to the side, the taste of blood filling my mouth. Brave, he said, wiping the spit from his face with a handkerchief. I see why Nico was interested, but that courage will end. It always does. He stood up and left, leaving me alone again in the darkness, with my cheek burning and my heart racing with pure terror. Across town, Nico's office had transformed into a war operations center. Maps were scattered across the desk, computers open showing security camera feeds, phones ringing incessantly as informants from across the city reported any information, however small. Rocco had never seen the boss like this. Nico had always been controlled, calculating, the kind of man who planned 10 steps ahead before making any move. But now there was something wild in his eyes, something primitive and dangerous that made even the most loyal men instinctively back away. Nothing yet? Nico asked for the 10th time in 5 minutes, voice tense as a rope about to snap. Boss, we're tracking all black vans registered in the area, checking traffic cameras, pressing our contacts on the streets, Rocco began. It's not enough. Nico slammed his hand on the desk so hard that one of the computers jumped. She's out there, alone, scared, possibly hurt, and I have no idea where. We'll find her, Rocco said, trying to sound confident. I'll burn this city if I have to, Nico said, and it wasn't an empty threat. It was a promise. Every building, every hideout, every rat hole where those bastards could be hiding her. I'll turn everything upside down until... His phone rang. Unknown number. Nico answered, putting it on speaker. Who is this? Hello, Nico. Marco Castellano's voice came through the speaker, full of cruel satisfaction. Looking for something? Or rather, Someone? Everyone in the office froze. Marco, Nico said, each letter pronounced with absolute venom. If you touched her... Oh, but I already did, Marco laughed. Right here in front of me, all tied up, with that scared look but still trying to be brave. I must admit you have good taste. Shame that soon she'll be too broken to be interesting. Nico's hand gripped the phone so hard the screen cracked. What do you want? Your surrender, your territories, your contacts, everything. In exchange, I'll consider returning the girl in not too small pieces. Where is she? Nico ignored the demands. In a place you'll never find in time. But don't worry, I'll take good care of her while you decide if pride is worth more than your girlfriend's life. The call ended. The silence in the office was absolute for 3 seconds. Then another phone rang. One of Nico's men answered, listened for a moment, and then turned with urgency. Boss, we traced the signal. And there's more. One of our informants saw the van. Abandoned warehouse in the port area. Property registered under a shell company name, but old records show connection to the Castellanos. Nico was already moving toward the door, grabbing the gun from the holster under the desk. How many men do we have available? 20. Armed and ready. Mobilize all of them. Now. Boss? Rocco followed behind him, voice loaded with concern. What if it's a trap? Marco might be expecting exactly this. Nico stopped, turned, and Rocco saw something in his eyes that made his blood run cold. Then let it be a trap. I'm going in anyway, because she's there, Rocco, and I'd rather die getting her out than live knowing I didn't try. But while Nico mobilized his private army, preparing for a war that could cost everything, a discovery was being made. One of Nico's computer technicians, combing through phone records searching for any clue, found something that made his heart stop. A call from a number registered in Valentina Rossi's name to a number that after investigation turned out to be Marco Castellanos, made 2 days before the kidnapping. Duration, 8 minutes. The tech ran to Rocco, showing him the screen. Rocco looked, reread it 3 times to be sure, and then felt nausea rising. My God, he whispered. He ran to Nico, who was already in the car, about to leave. Boss, you need to see this. Nico looked at the screen Rocco showed him, saw the name, saw the numbers, saw the undeniable connection. His face didn't change, but Rocco saw something die in his eyes. Valentina, Nico said, voice coming out dead, hollow. My son's mother betrayed me. Again. Boss. Later, Nico cut him off. First Luna. Then I deal with Valentina. The rescue was quick, brutal, and efficient. Nico and his men stormed the warehouse with the precision of a military operation. There were gunshots, screams, the sound of bones breaking and men falling. Marco tried to use me as a shield. A gun pressed against my temple, but Nico didn't hesitate. A single shot. Precise. Fatal. Marco fell, eyes still wide with surprise. And then Nico was there, cutting the ropes from my wrists, pulling me into his arms with an urgency that bordered on desperation. Luna, look at me. Are you okay? Hurt. What did they do to you? I'm fine, I managed to say, even though I was trembling violently. I'm fine now. He carried me out, refusing to let me go even when the paramedics tried to examine me, and only at the hospital, when the doctors insisted, did he finally let me go. I woke up in a private hospital room, soft morning light filtering through the curtains. Nico was sitting beside me, holding my hand, eyes red from a sleepless night. Hi, I murmured. Hi, he replied, bringing my hand to his lips and kissing it gently. How do you feel? Sore, scared, but alive. Never again, he said, voice loaded with a promise that sounded almost like a threat. Never again does anyone touch you. Never again are you without protection. Never again. Nico, I began, but the words stuck in my throat. Valentina did this, didn't she? He closed his eyes, pain crossing his face. Yes, she passed information to Marco about you, your routine, when you'd be vulnerable, out of sick jealousy, because she never got over me moving on. Never accepted that I chose you. Where is she? In custody, complicity in kidnapping. And when I'm done testifying against her, she'll be in prison for a long time. But before everything settled down, Nico had one last thing to do. Valentina was in an interrogation room when he entered, still wearing the expensive dress from when she was arrested, but makeup smudged and eyes red from crying. Nico, she began, standing up. Please, you have to understand. You touched her. Nico cut her off, voice so cold that Valentina backed away. You used our son for your manipulations. You made a deal with my worst enemy. It's over. I loved you, Valentina screamed, tears running down her face. I still love you. She doesn't deserve you, doesn't understand you like I do, doesn't have our history. And I love her, Nico replied, each word coming out firm. Final. Not you. Never you again. That's the difference. You chose me once, Valentina said, voice breaking. Married me, had a child with me, built a life with me, and you threw it all away when you cheated on me, Nico interrupted. Now you pay the price. You're nothing to me anymore, Valentina. Just Liam's mother. Nothing more than that. And when this is all over, when you get out of prison, I never want to see you again. He turned to leave. Nico, please, Valentina begged, but he didn't stop. Didn't look back. The door closed behind him, final as a coffin. 3 days later, Still in the hospital, I received an unexpected visitor, Liam. He entered hesitantly, looking smaller somehow, shoulders curved under the weight of everything that had happened. Luna, he began. I didn't know. About my mother. About the plan. About anything. You have to believe me. I looked at him, this man I once thought I loved, and felt only emptiness. I believe you, Liam, but it doesn't matter anymore. He nodded, tears threatening to fall. She's in jail. My mother is in jail because of you. And because of herself, I corrected gently, because of her choices. He stood there for another moment, and then left, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Nico entered seconds later, having waited outside. Are you okay? He asked. Yes, I replied, extending my hand to him, especially now that you're here. He took my hand, intertwining our fingers, and for the first time in days, smiled. But neither of us knew that Valentina, from prison, still had one last card to play, and that card would involve manipulating her son one last time. Chapter 7. The Mother and the Ultimatum.
I will not choose guilt.
The state women's prison wasn't the kind of place Valentina Rossi ever imagined knowing from the inside. The gray walls, the smell of cheap disinfectant mixed with despair, the orange uniforms that erased any trace of individuality, all of it was an affront to the woman who had once commanded elegant dining rooms and charity galas. But the worst part wasn't the environment. It was the silence of the phone that rarely rang, the absence of visits she desperately hoped for, the emptiness of knowing that the man she still loved had moved on so completely that not even her imprisonment had awakened anything in him beyond cold indifference. When Liam finally showed up, 2 weeks after her detention, Valentina almost collapsed with relief. They sat on opposite sides of the metal table in the visiting room, separated by a distance that seemed more emotional than physical. Liam had deep dark circles, his face pale, shoulders curved under the weight of everything that had crumbled around him. Mom, he began, voice thick. How could you? Valentina extended her hands across the table, trying to reach his, but he instinctively pulled back. The rejection hurt more than anything the lawyers or prosecutors had said. Son, you need to understand, she began, voice urgent, desperate. I did this for us, to stop that woman from destroying our family. Your father doesn't love you anymore because of her. Don't you see? Luna poisoned him against us, against everything we built together. You paid criminals to kidnap her, Liam exploded, slamming his hands on the table. She could have died. How was that for us? Because he needed a reality check, Valentina insisted, leaning forward with feverish intensity. Your father needed to see that this ridiculous relationship only brings danger. Chaos, destruction. I was saving him from himself. Liam shook his head, incredulous. You're crazy. You've really lost your mind. No. Valentina grabbed the edges of the table, knuckles turning white. I'm clear-headed for the first time in years. Liam, listen. There's still time. You can fix this. How? He asked, exhausted. Valentina leaned closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a precious secret. Give him an ultimatum. Go to your father and tell him he needs to choose. His family, his son, everything you've built together over 30 years. Or this girl he's known for months. Make him choose, Liam. Make him see he's throwing everything away. Mom, he already chose. He chose her, because you didn't press hard enough, Valentina practically screamed, making the guards look in their direction. She forced herself to lower her voice again. You're his son, Liam. His blood. That has to mean something. Make him choose officially, publicly, either us or her. And when he realizes what he's losing, what if he chooses her anyway? Liam asked. Voice small, vulnerable. Valentina was silent for a moment, and then her face hardened. Then at least you know where you stand. At least the mask falls completely, and you can move on knowing you did everything you could. Liam looked at his mother for a long moment, seeing for the first time not the elegant, powerful woman who raised him, but someone broken, desperate, clinging to any hope, however toxic. But he was weak, always had been, and a lifetime of manipulation didn't undo itself in a few weeks. Okay, he said finally, hating himself for agreeing. I'll try. Nico's house was quiet when Liam arrived unannounced 2 days later. Rocco let him in reluctantly, having received orders from the boss that Liam was still his son, and therefore had access, even after everything that had happened. Nico was in the living room reading documents, and looked up when Liam entered. There was no warmth in the look, but there also wasn't the absolute coldness that Valentina received now. Liam, Nico said, putting the papers aside. Wasn't expecting you. Dad, Liam began, standing awkwardly in the middle of the room, hands in his pockets. We need to talk. For real this time. Nico gestured to the couch. So sit. Liam sat on the edge, as if ready to flee at any moment. For a long moment, the silence between them was dense, loaded with everything that hadn't been said, with everything that had been broken, and maybe couldn't be fixed. I visited Mom, Liam said finally. Figured you would. She's destroyed, Dad. Completely broken. And I know what she did was terrible, unforgivable even. But she's my mother. And you. He stopped, swallowing hard. You're my father, and I feel like I'm losing both of you. Nico sighed, running his hand over his face. Liam, your mother made choices that have consequences. I can't. Please, Liam interrupted, and there were tears in his eyes now. Please, Dad, choose us. Choose your family. Luna, she'll understand. She can find someone else, but I only have one father. We only have one family. Luna isn't replaceable, Nico said, voice getting harder. And I am? Liam asked, voice breaking. 30 years, Dad. 30 years of us being family. Isn't that worth more than a few months with a woman you barely know? Nico stood up, walking to the window, looking at the city below. When he spoke, his voice was tired, but firm. I choose Luna. The 3 words fell between them like bombs. So it's true, Liam said, standing up too, hands trembling. Mom was right. You don't love us anymore. She destroyed our family and you let her. No, Nico turned, facing his son. I love you as my son. I always will. But I won't sacrifice my love, my happiness, my chance to finally have something real for your mother's manipulation. But we're your family. Valentina made choices when she cheated on me. You made choices when you cheated on Luna with her sister. And now I make my choices. Nico crossed his arms, postured defensive but firm. I choose not to live in the past. I choose not to let guilt or obligation dictate my life. I choose Luna because she makes me happy in a way I'd forgotten was possible. What if I say it's her or me? Liam threw out the ultimatum, exactly as Valentina had instructed. If I say that while you're with her, I don't want contact, don't want a relationship. Nico was silent for a long moment, and Liam saw pain cross his father's face, real and deep. But when Nico spoke, his voice didn't waver. Then I'll respect your choice and hope that one day you mature enough to realize that love isn't a zero-sum game, that I can love her and still love you. But I won't choose between you and the way you want, Liam, because what you're asking for isn't love, it's control. Liam stood there, processing, and then the tears finally fell. I lost you. No. Nico took a step toward his son, voice softening. You didn't lose me, but you need to accept that you can't have me the way your mother wants. When you're ready to have a real relationship, based on mutual respect and not manipulation, I'll be here. But Liam was already leaving, unable to hear more, unable to accept that the ultimatum had failed so completely. The door closed behind him, and Nico stood alone in the quiet room, heartbroken but conscience clear. Amber was giving an interview when Maya called me, furious. Turn on the TV, Channel 7, now. I turned it on, and there she was, my sister, wearing a conservative dress and makeup that made her look innocent. Vulnerable, talking to a reporter with a perfectly rehearsed expression of sisterly concern. Look, I love my sister, Amber was saying, voice soft but loaded with disguised venom. But I'm genuinely worried about her. This relationship with Nico Rossi started as revenge against me and Liam, and now it's escalated into something dangerous. Kidnappings, arrests, violence. Luna set all this up as part of an elaborate revenge plan, and now she can't get out. That, Maya began on the phone, but I was already hanging up, already grabbing my purse, already heading out the door. I found Amber leaving the TV studio 20 minutes later, still being followed by cameras, still smiling that sweet fake smile. Amber! I shouted, crossing the parking lot in long strides. She turned, and for a second, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. But then the mask returned, along with the cameras that immediately focused on the two of us. Luna, she said, voice loud enough for the microphones to pick up. I'm glad you're okay. I was so worried. Say it to my face, I interrupted, stopping right in front of her, not caring about the cameras, about the reporters approaching like vultures. No cameras, no audience. Just you and me. Say I set everything up. Her smile faltered. Luna, I don't understand. You stole him, I shouted, and I saw satisfaction flash in her eyes. Admit it. You took Liam not because you wanted him, but because he was mine. And you took his father for the same reason, Amber shouted back, the mask finally falling. You stole Nico from me. Nico was never yours. But you only looked at him after I took Liam. Amber was crying now, real tears of rage and envy. You always had everything, Luna. Always were the responsible one, the good girl, the one everyone admired. And me? I was just the little sister, the spoiled one, the one who was never taken seriously. So yes, I took Liam. And yes, I wanted to destroy you and Nico. Because for the first time, I wanted you to feel what I've always felt. The silence that fell was absolute. Even the reporters went quiet. You know what's funny, Amber? I asked, my voice coming out calm now, almost pitying. You stole my dignity, my trust, my relationship. But I just found something better. Found someone who loves me for real. Not because I'm a trophy or revenge, but because I'm me. And you ended up with a man who will never love you as much as he loves his mother's approval. So who really lost here? I turned and left, leaving Amber standing in the middle of the parking lot, surrounded by cameras that captured every second of her breakdown. 6 months later, things finally started to calm down. Valentina, from prison, had tried something desperate and terrible. The guards found her on the cell floor, wrists cut with a piece of metal no one figured out how she got. She survived, but barely, and after that was transferred to a psychiatric wing where finally Finally, she began mandatory therapy. The psychiatrist's reports that Nico eventually received painted a picture of a woman who had lost her identity when she lost the marriage, who had built all her self-worth on being Nico Rossi's wife, and when that was taken from her, simply fell apart. Liam and Amber got married in a small, sad ceremony. None of us were invited. We didn't expect to be. But Maya, Rocco, Nico's friends, my co-workers who remained loyal, they all formed something new. A chosen family, built not on blood or obligation, but on genuine love and conscious choice. And me and Nico, against the world, but together, always together. Chapter 8, Rebuilding.
Will you marry me?
Yes. 6 months later, Italy welcomed me like a warm, necessary embrace. Nico's villa was in Tuscany, hidden among hills covered with vineyards that stretched as far as the eye could see, with cypress trees lined along the dirt road that led to the property. The house itself was a masterpiece of ancient stone and careful restoration, with arched windows that captured the golden afternoon light, and a terrace that offered breathtaking views of the valley below. It was so different from New York that for the first few days I simply walked through the rooms trying to believe it was real, that I was actually there, away from the chaos, the violence, the judgmental looks, and sensationalist headlines. Nico had semi-retired, passing his shadier business to trusted men, and focusing only on the legitimate ventures he'd always maintained as a front, but that were now becoming his main reality. He still worked, but at human hours, without the constant tension of always looking over his shoulder. And me? I had discovered something I didn't even know I'd lost. In the room Nico converted into a studio for me, with perfect natural light and a view of the vineyards, I painted. I hadn't picked up a brush since college, when I gave up artistic dreams in favor of financial stability. But here, with time and peace, and Nico's constant encouragement, the passion returned like a flood. My parents had visited the previous month. Finally, after months of tense conversations and gradual reconciliations. My mother cried when she saw the villa, when she saw how Nico looked at me, when she realized her daughter was genuinely happy in a way she never was with Liam. "I'm sorry," she'd said on the last night of the visit, holding my hands on the terrace while we watched the sunset, "for not supporting you before, for letting Amber do what she did, for judging without understanding." "It's okay, Mom," I'd replied, and it was true. Forgiveness had come easier than expected, maybe because current happiness made past grudges less important. As for Valentina, the reports that came through Nico's lawyers painted a picture of slow but real transformation. The mandatory therapy in the psychiatric wing had become voluntary, and she was, from what it seemed, finally confronting the demons that had consumed her for years. Her relationship with Liam was improving, mother and son rebuilding something healthier than the toxic codependency that existed before. But her and Nico, just cordial when absolutely necessary, because of their son, nothing more. And both seemed finally at peace with that. Liam and Amber had gotten married, as Maya informed me through scandalized messages accompanied by photos someone had posted on social media. The ceremony looked as empty as the relationship, forced smiles and eyes that didn't meet with true joy. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a kind of distant pity. It was an October afternoon when it happened. The sun was setting over the vineyards, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple that looked like they came from a Renaissance painting. I was on the terrace, cleaning brushes after a productive session in the studio, when I heard footsteps behind me. "Luna," Nico's voice made me turn. Yes, he was standing there, wearing jeans and a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled by the wind, and there was something different in his expression. Nervousness, maybe, mixed with a determination I knew well. And then he knelt down. My heart stopped, hands flying to cover my mouth as tears instantly filled my eyes. "You came into my life for revenge," he began, voice hoarse with emotion. "But you gave me everything. Love, a reason to wake up in the morning. Real life after years of just existing." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a ring that caught the light of the sunset and reflected it in 1,000 directions. "Marry me?" Tears were already streaming down my face. "Are you sure? Everything we went through, Valentina, Liam, all the chaos, the age difference, the people who will always judge. That's why I'm sure," he interrupted, taking my hand with his free one. "Because we faced the world and won together. Because we already went through the worst and came out the other side stronger. Because I love you in a way I never thought possible. So yes, Luna, I'm sure. More sure than I've ever been of anything in my life." "Yes," I managed to say through sobs. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, stood up and pulled me into his arms, kissing me as the sun set behind us, bathing everything in golden light. 1 year later, we got married at the same villa, under an arch of white flowers overlooking the vineyards we now knew so well. It was a small ceremony, only 20 people, but each one of them meant something. Maya was at my side as maid of honor, wearing a turquoise blue dress she'd chosen specifically because she knew I'd hate being the only one wearing white. Rocco was beside Nico as best man, trying to hide tears behind sunglasses, even though there wasn't sun bright enough to justify them. My parents were in the front row, my mother crying openly, my father smiling with pride. Some friends from New York who remained loyal, co-workers who'd become confidants, members of Nico's team who had become family. Valentina wasn't present, but on the morning of the wedding, a letter arrived. Nico read it first, face carefully neutral, and then passed it to me. The handwriting was the same elegant script from the poisonous notes of the past, but the words were completely different. Nico and Luna, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that through therapy, through months of painful work confronting who I became, I finally understood. I never let go. I held so tight to something that was already dead that I poisoned everything around me, including my son, including myself. I'm sorry for everything. For the manipulation, for the violence, for refusing to accept that you deserve to be happy, Nico. And Luna, I'm sorry for seeing you as an enemy when you were just a woman in love trying to find happiness. I finally understood that I need to let go, and I'm letting go. Be happy. You deserve it. With respect and finally, peace. Valentina. I carefully folded the letter and set it aside. It was closure I didn't know I needed. Liam and Amber weren't invited. The truth was I didn't even think about them frequently anymore. They were part of a chapter of my life that was completely closed, without resentment, but also without desire to revisit. When it was time for the vows, we stood facing each other under the arch of flowers, hands intertwined, and the rest of the world disappeared. Nico, I began, my voice trembling only slightly. You were revenge that became love, chaos that became peace, wrong that became right in ways I never imagined. I promise to love you beyond age, beyond history, beyond everything the world says we should or shouldn't be. I promise to choose you every day, the same way you chose me when it was easier to give up. Nico squeezed my hands, eyes shining. Luna, you saved me from loneliness, from an emptiness I didn't even realize was consuming me, from an ex-wife who never left me alone because I allowed it, because it was easier than confronting. You taught me that love isn't obligation or history, but daily choice. I promise every day to prove it's worth choosing love over expectations, passion over convenience, you over everything and everyone. When the officiant declared us husband and wife, the kiss we shared was witnessed by applause and whistles, Maya shouting, "Finally!" loud enough to make everyone laugh. Later that night, after the guests had left and the villa was quiet again, Nico and I stood on the terrace under a sky full of stars. Do you regret it? I asked, leaning against his chest, his tuxedo shirt already unbuttoned, my wedding dress traded for something more comfortable. Choosing me over Liam, over making peace with Valentina, over all the pain it caused? Never, he replied without hesitation, kissing the top of my head. You're my family now, Luna. My love, my life, my future, there's no regret in that. And Liam, Valentina, do they finally accept it? Nico was silent for a moment, thinking. Valentina is in therapy, getting better, dealing with her demons. Liam still has a journey ahead, still needs to grow, learn that manipulation isn't love. But you know what? He turned me in his arms so we could look at each other. I don't care about their approval anymore. I don't live waiting for Valentina to finally leave me alone, or for Liam to mature. I only care about this. He pulled me closer, sealing the space between us. You and me, always, always, I repeated, and then kissed him under the stars, in our villa, in our new life. As I stood there, safe in his arms, my mind briefly went back to where it all began. My sister hooked up with my ex, so I fell in love with his father, who was also the ex-husband of my ex's mother, who hated me for double reasons, for being her son's girlfriend, and for stealing the man she still loved. And yes, everything fell apart, violently, publicly, in ways that left scars that were still healing. But from the rubble, we built something better, stronger, more real, a love worth fighting for, a love worth all the chaos, all the judgment, all the pain. A love that simply was. And as night wrapped Tuscany in its dark embrace, and the stars shone above like eternal witnesses, I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't change anything, because this was my happy ending. Not perfect, not without complications, but mine, ours, and that was more than enough. It was everything.